We talked about Parshat Vayishlach and Yaakov and Esav, the great anxiety, the great meeting, the aftermath of it, the destruction. Yaakov lets his guard down, the sadness, the terrible, the rape of Dinah, the exposure, Shimon and Levi carrying on and going and injuring members of and killing the people of Shechem. And then Yaakov finally gets home, and Yitzchak dies, and Esav comes, and Yitzchak buries Yaakov with Esav, and we're told about the genealogy of Esav. Just a quick, summary. And we spoke yesterday about this woman, Timnah, this princess, as it were, who wanted to join the Jewish people, went to the family of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and they wouldn't accept her, and she went and joined as a Pilegesh for Esav's son Eliphaz, who gives birth to, according to the Midrash, well, she gives birth to Amalek, according to the Midrash. That is the backstory of it. And so, the main theme in this story over the last this parsha is really Esav, Yaakov, and Esav. Esav's kiss, is it sincere? Is it insincere? Should Yaakov have gone with Esav? Was he right not to go with Esav? The birth of Amalek, the future hatred of Israel. Yaakov and Esav do come together to bury their father Yitzchak, but they go their separate ways. And so that's, Yaakov so letting his guard down after he finishes with Esav is very much sort of the main focus of the majority of the parsha is Esav. And thus, the Haftorah that was chosen by the rabbis is the book of Ovadiah. The book of Ovadiah is a very the shortest book in Tanakh. It's all of one chapter. According to contemporary scholars and most people, Ovadiah lives in the aftermath of the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash. And the reason why that seems to make the most sense is it's a prophecy where he speaks of Esav, and he talks about how Esav was really joyous at the day of, and by Esav, I mean Esav himself, means his descendants, the Edomites and others, at the day when Bnei Israel were destroyed, when Jerusalem was destroyed. This is from the 11th verse of the book of Ovadiah. Again, it's only one chapter. B'yom amadcha mineged, b'yom shvot zarim chelo v'nachrim ba'u sha'ara v'al Yerushalayim yado goral gam ata kachad mehem. On the day you stood from afar, and the day strangers captured his possessions and foreigners came into his cities, and in Jerusalem they cast lots. You too are like ones of them. You should not have looked on the day of your brother, on the day of his being delivered, right? Yaakov and Esav were brothers. And you should not have rejoiced about the children of Judah on the day of their destruction. You should not have spoken proudly on the day of their distress. And he's speaking to the people from the family of his cousins of Edom, and saying to them, this is not the way that you should have acted. It's a book very much about ethical obligations, responsibility to protect others, right? That you gloated, you blocked escape paths, you handed over refugees, you were more than happy to join by in the plundered. First, right, he says, don't stand by your brother's blood. You stood aside while Bnei Israel were suffering, but then goes even further with these other aspects of it. And so the rabbi, Chazal, the book seems to be written in the aftermath of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, specifically saying, how could you do such a thing? How could you not come and help your brothers? You have an ethical obligation to protect others. Lo tamod al dam reacha, it says in the Torah. Go all the way back, Cain and Hevel, right? Cain kills Hevel, and God says to him, where is Cain? And Hevel says, Hashomer achi anochi. Some terrible words early on in the Torah. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, you are your brother's keeper. Yes, you have this responsibility. And so the book is very much ethical. Obviously, he's talking about Edom. He later goes on in the book and says that the Edomites didn't come, and they didn't defend Bnei Israel, and there's going to be a judgment against them. That's the book begins that way. God is going to summon the nations to fight against Edom. Their alliances will betray them for their crimes against their brother Yaakov, and there's going to be this reversal. The house of Yaakov will ultimately prevail. Yaakov will return, and the book ends with the last phrase, last pasuk in the verse, a verse that we may know, Va'alu Moshiim Bahar Tzion Lishbot et Haresav Va'ita Ladonai Hamelucha. Right, the saviors will ascend Mount Zion to judge the mountain of Esav, Har Seir, that's where Esav has gone, and the Lord will have kingdom. Ultimately, it will come to this point where Israelite is on top, and these enemies, these people who attacked, and the people who stood by, who should have come to the aid of their brethren, of their cousins, who didn't, and then and looked from afar, and then later helped mop up the mess, helped take the booty, helped take the loot, delivered captives, delivered people who ran away to the enemies of Israel. They will have their comeuppance. They will have their day. And so that's the main idea of the prophet Ovadja. And you think about it, how many from people from the tribe of Edom listen to this book? It's supposed to inspire Bnei Israel. We talked at length in the Tanakh class about the Yechezkel, and his name is Chazak El. You have to bring strength to God during the time of destruction. After the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, God looks feeble and weak. Yechezkel, he's going to show the strength, the Chazak of El, and you also have to bring strength to the people. Ovadja is like the servant of God. He's telling Bnei Israel, he's telling the other people who have been exiled that things are going to turn out okay. Edom is going to have their revenge is going to happen against Edom. They're going to get their comeuppance. They're going to get what they deserve. We are going to return back one day. We are going to be in charge. And that's a big piece. That's who the prophet Ovadja is, according to seemingly the language and what he's describing in the aftermath of the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash, words of comfort through the downfall of the enemies of Israel and downfall of those who either stood by or even helped a little bit. Reminded, a friend of mine who was with last night was talking about, he went on a March of the Living type tour, and he was talking about the towns he went to, and right, these little towns of 3,000 people in, and the Nazis had to go because of Operation Barbossa or this thing or that thing, and they said to the Poles or the Lithuanians, they said, listen, we have to leave. So, if you guys want to, you could take care of the 1,000 Jews or 2,000 Jews that you and your families have been living with for the last, 2,000 years or whatever. And in a sense, not to the same extent, but that's in a sense who Edom is. They're supposed to be our cousins. They're our neighbors. They're people, yes, we weren't always best friends with them, but how could they stand by? How could they allow this to happen? How could they help it in any way? And so there's a message of comfort, and there's also a message of obligation to the other members of Bnei Israel. We're supposed to hear it and understand, when our brothers are in trouble, we need to come to help them. We cannot be like Edomites. We have to be like Israelites. We have to go and we have to help our brothers. We have to help people in our orbit, in our sphere. We have to help people when they are in trouble. And that's the basic idea of the book of Ovadja. There is a second level to the book that's created by the rabbis. The rabbis like to do this. Ovadja, we don't know who Ovadja is. He's just an anonymous prophet who's mentioned. Chazon Ovadja, the vision of Ovadja, but we're not told who Ovadja is, when he lives, what he is, as sort of I'm saying from the description of the book, what is the majority of the opinion. So the rabbis in the Talmud, and this is midrashic, this is more midrashic, Talmudic type ideas generally. We always like to identify a person if we have an anonymous person mentioned, or if we have a person whose name is mentioned and mentioned in another place. So for example, it never identifies. If I ask, who did Avram send to find a wife for his son Yitzchak? So we were taught in grade school, those of us who went to the privilege of going to Jewish day school, we were told he sent his servant Eliezer. Never identifies the servant Eliezer. It calls him different things throughout the chapter of him going to the house of Lavan and finding Rivka. He's called an Eved. He's called Adon. Based upon who he's speaking with, different names are given, but he's anonymous. His name is never given. It's not about his name. It's about him playing a part. And so the rabbis, however, they don't want it to be anonymous, so they say it's Eliezer. And we have different things like that throughout midrashic literature. So here too, the rabbis don't want this Ovadja to just be some random prophet named Ovadja, even though we could say Ovadja, it's great. He's Ovadja. He's the servant of God. As I said to you, this was his mission. He's laser focused. He doesn't have this long book. He doesn't have many themes. This is his one message. And this is what he's saying to Bnei Israel. And that's a very important message. But the rabbis, the Midrash and the Gemara, they say that this is the same Ovadja as a different Ovadja. There's one other Ovadja that we encounter in the Tanakh, and he comes up in the book of Melachim during the time of a terrible Israelite king, Achav, and his worst wife, Jezebel. They are purging the prophets of God. They are going and they are killing the prophets of God. And we're told that there is somebody named Ovadiah who's sort of the chief of staff of Achav. And as chief of staff of Achav, we're introduced to him that Achav says there's a drought and we need to find if there's any water, if there's any rain, all our animals are going to die. We're going to have no horses. If an enemy attacks, we'll have no way of going and defending ourselves. So Achav says, I'll go east and you'll go west, to look for water. We need to find water. We're going to, this is terrible. So he's a very important person in the house of Achav. And he goes down the road and he meets up with the great prophet and the enemy of Achav, Eliyahu Hanavi. And he says to Eliyahu, oh my God, my master, how are you? And Eliyahu says to him, you're not my master. I'm not your master. You go speak to your master. Your master is Achav. And there's a whole discussion there that comes up where Eliyahu sort of accuses him of treachery and being part of the enemy. And Ovadiah says over and over again, is trying to say to him, no. I am with you. I am part of your team. And what do we know? What does it tell us about Ovadiah in that chapter? Ovadiah hid 100 prophets. When Yezebel was killing all the prophets, Eliyahu ran away. He hid in a cave. He went to the desert. He went far away when he was threatened. Ovadiah went and he hid and he fed. We don't know for how long, for years. He fed prophets of God, young people who were attuned to God's message and not following the idolatry and the immorality that Achav and especially Yezebel were pushing on Bnei Yisrael. And so this Ovadiah, two things with that. Number one, why do the rabbis connect this Ovadiah with that Ovadiah? Yes, they want to, of course. Like I said, we don't want to just know that this person, we don't know who he is. So we connect the two names together because the rabbis Midrash doesn't really like anonymous people. We want to give names to people. We want to put the people together. But also, if we think the theme, what's the theme of this book? The book of Ovadiah, our one chapter book that we're going to read, that we're reading tomorrow's the Haftorah. What is the theme? Helping people, not standing idly by, not just watching. Ovadiah has a good job, presumably. He's like chief of staff of the king or something. He's being fed. He's going to eat the people, right? This is right. The people in charge are not the ones who are going to starve. So even if there's a drought, Achav is eating, Ovadiah is eating. But Ovadiah is a person who's not going to stand by. He's not going to allow the death of the prophets. He's going to go and he's going to risk himself. He's going to hide them. He is what we would call during the time of the Shoah, Chasidei Umot HaOlam. He wasn't an Umot HaOlam. He's not righteous amongst the Gentiles because he's not a Gentile, but he's somebody who risks his life by saving members of Bnei Israel who were being threatened. So the idea where the rabbis say that this is Ovadiah, it's not just random, this is an anonymous person. It also has to do thematically with the way Ovadiah acts. One other thing, which is very interesting about, and again, this is the Ovadiah in Melachim, not the Ovadiah in our chapter, is that there are those who've explained that the discussion between Ovadiah and Eliyahu is a fascinating discussion about whether it's better to work within the system or outside the system. Eliyahu says to Ovadiah, you're not a loyal servant of God. I'm not your master. You're the chief of staff of Achav. Achav is a terrible idolater. How could you be on his side? And Ovadiah says, no, I'm with you. You're my master. And Eliyahu, and they have this back and forth. I forget, it's maybe in like the 17th, the 18th chapter of the book of 1 Kings, maybe the 19th chapter. I don't remember exactly which chapter it is. And underneath are those who've explained that what it's all about is a question of whether or not it's the right thing to try to work in a messed up system. Is it better to reject a system altogether? Or is it better, perhaps, to work within a system, try to improve the system? Eliyahu is an extremist. Eliyahu Hanavi he doesn't try to reform Achav. He doesn't try to reform Yezebel. He screams at them. He destroys things. It's fire. It's destruction. And I have to say, he's not that successful, unfortunately. He has moments where Bnei Yisrael return, but generally he's not that successful as prophecy. Ovadiah here, and I'm not saying that this is the case in all times, but in their time period, Ovadiah versus Eliyahu, Ovadiah remains within the system, even though it's a corrupt system. But he's able to use his position, his influence, his power to save these 100 prophets, to hide them in a cave, to feed them. And so it's a very interesting sort of thing. When we read tomorrow the book of Ovadiah, a short book, we'll have much to think about, not standing by, making sure we're helping other people. Is it just the Sovaj in the aftermath who's serving as the servant of God, giving chizuk to Bnei Israel to stand up? The comeuppance to their enemies will happen and they will return. Valu Moshim Bahar Tzion. And also with the other Ovadiah who we encounter at the time of Eliyahu, who also is challenging us to really think about, yes, we're going to encounter in life societies that are bad, institutions that aren't good. And is it best to go against those institutions on our own? Or is it best at times to work within those institutions to fix those institutions? Because sometimes that is the better way to help and improve the lives of people.